Hello, Paul Pluter, ArchieLuxury channel, Paul Pluter channel, and I'd like to talk about the investment potential of wristwatches. And I gotta be completely honest with you. Before I continue, like, subscribe, tell your friends, look in the description for 10 ways you can keep me full-time on YouTube. Man cannot live on Google Ads. I've got many ways you can help me. You can sponsor me on Patreon. That means paying a couple bucks a month to keep me here. You can look at my for sale section. Maybe there's something you'd like to buy. I get a small commission on some of these pieces. You can deal with my friends at Jewellers on Time. You can organize a paid review. Help me, help me, help me. Today, I want to talk about the risk, the collectible, the investment potential of the wristwatch market. And I gotta tell you, we are in a very bad situation. Wristwatches themselves there are something which really in today's society is a luxury. These are luxuries. Everybody has a smartphone. Smartphone's more accurate, and this is how we tell the time. I gotta be completely frank and honest with you. This is helping me look at my world time. Look at that. I keep a photo of the world time on my smartphone when I check the time. Guys, you gotta understand the whole wristwatch market, the collectability. We are in very, very hard times. And it saddens me because I love my wristwatches. I love wristwatches. And, you know, I like seeing new models. It always puts enthusiasm into the market. Even though I may not buy new, the new models filtering through, trickle down, it really keeps the enthusiasm going. So let's have a talk about the investment potential of many wristwatches here. And the first thing I want to say is, number one, world events. This plays a huge, huge factor. We've got a situation where China at the moment, which was going through phenomenal growth, has issues. Issues, that's right. Just Google Chinese ghost cities. Just Google China themselves. China itself is really clamping down. They are limiting the supply out of China of money. That's right. If you're in China, you've got money. It's not so easy to transfer it to a foreign country. They're clamping down. So we've got, in the world scene, China is very uncertain. We've got massive uncertainty in Asia. Hong Kong, Singapore, Bangkok. They are seeing very, very slow market because there's a lot of uncertainty in the Asia-Pacific region. We go to Europe, England. We've got turmoil in England with the Brexit, leaving the EU. In Europe itself there, we've got huge turmoil. We've got major voter backlash against the traditional political parties in France. And we're seeing a lot of uncertainty, a lot of issues with the migrants flooding in from war-torn Syria, the Middle East, Africa. We're seeing a lot of uncertainty in Europe. We've got many economies in Europe in trouble. Think Poland, think Yugoslavia, Croatia, Serbia, Greece, Spain, Portugal. Fucking nasty. And then we look at America itself there. Ooh, we've got the Trumpster at the wheel. And even though I'm a huge Trumpster fan, he may not have solved all the problems as quickly as some of us would have hoped. So there is uncertainty. Uncertainty brings consumer slowdown. So the whole world scene is chaotic, to say the least. The second factor is that wristwatches themselves there have come at a huge time. There's never been, prior to the slowdown over the last 18 months, never been such a great time in the wristwatch market. Rolex has never made more watches. Rolex was making over 1 million pieces a year. Patek Philippe, which was a very obscure little brand, they've never produced as many complications as they have in the last 5 years. That's right, because you look at the catalogues from Patek Philippe, and yes, they always had grand complications, perpetual calendar chronographs, they had world times, but a lot of these things, chronographs, they were big money. Most people buying a Patek got a very simple Patek. What Patek Philippe has done is they've reduced the costs, and technologies allowed them to bring out useful complications like the annual calendar instead of the perpetual calendar, the annual calendar chronograph instead of the perpetual calendar chronograph. So many interesting complications. Numbers have never been so high. And I gotta be completely frank and honest with you. We've got players like Rolex who are doing the Panerai trick, limited editions, special models, very secretive, limiting supply. Everyone wants what they can't have, so we just trickle a few out. Very clever idea on Rolex's behalf. So, as far as the investment potential of these watches, we've got world uncertainty. We've got a massive Swiss market who's never produced so many. And third thing we've got is changing technology. I mean, a wristwatch was a really cool thing to have. It was really cool to be able to tell time. Nowadays, most people have a smartphone. This is killing off the wristwatch, the camera, so many devices. This is killing off the PC, the laptop. The smartphone is taking its toll on these. So when you look at these things here, it's very turbulent. The investment potential. What is it like, the investment potential? And I would say it is risky. It is very risky. And there are very few brands that I would be investing in. This is the investor talking, not the collector. Let's be honest. Patek Philippe, I love the brand. Love the brand to death. They've done themselves a disservice by releasing far too many complications, far too many watches in far too many markets. So that ain't good. Okay, that means there, honestly, a lot of pieces there. Yes, you look at the investment potential, and do Pateks continually go up? Well, they do and they don't. But Patek Philippe is doing something I never thought possible. They're releasing models as fashion statements. I mean, let's face it, the World Time, that's the one I've got, the World Time came out in 1930s. It was dropped sometime in the 60s. Wasn't available 70s, 80s, 90s. Came back early 2000. 2000, the model lasts until 2006 when the slightly bigger version, the 5110, was replaced by the 5130. And then in 2016, that was replaced by the 5230, a new version. Why these different versions? Because they can sell them, and the problem is you've got the same customers buying multiple pieces. See, the whole psyche to watches was different in the 50s and 60s. Then people wanted one good watch. You didn't have a collection. That was hoarding. We were just come off World War II rationing. So this is the whole thing to wristwatches themselves there. The whole collectability as an investment is really, really shaky ground. The other scary thing you're having in the wristwatch collectible market is that so many of these makers, they're trying to keep the servicing in-house. Go and have a look on the secondary market and see what a three-hand Audemars Piguet and a complicated Audemars Piguet go for. And you'd be surprised how similar in price they are. Why is that so? Why does a dual time Audemars Piguet, why is it similar to a automatic three-hand date model? The answer lies in the very expensive service costs. That is the reason. That is the reason. And that reason there alone will really, it's going to kill the secondary value. People are scared. You've got an Audemars Piguet that hasn't been serviced in a couple of years. Ooh, try selling it. Rolex themselves, they used to give tools to independent watchmakers so that Rolex's philosophy was if people could service it, they would sell more. Now they've taken all that service work back in. That's a big core of their profit. The other thing that's happening in this world itself here is we are seeing a lot of uncertainty. Never before has there been such change. The speed of change is very fast. Big companies like Encyclopedia Britannica don't exist. Big companies like Olivetti don't exist. General Motors on the verge of bankruptcy. We're seeing massive change. So, as far as investment potential for watches, what's the verdict? Well, I wouldn't be putting all my eggs in one basket. The next thing is you have to really be careful with what you buy. I was talking to a serious collector last night. He had a Jaeger-LeCoultre deep sea chronograph. Beautiful watch, absolutely stunning. And he mentioned it to me. He's priced it below Chrono 24, which is pretty good. But he's still very, very strong in the price. And I think the prices are lower than he was wanting to sell it for. And he said to me, this is so much better than a Rolex. Yes, you're right, it is so much better than a Rolex. But Rolex holds its value. To be honest with you, the investment advice is Rolex Steel Sports, some Rolex two-tone sports, gold sports, unless you're buying it really, you've got to buy it sort of 20-year-old piece to be able to get any sort of big discount off it. Try and stay away from that. Omega Steel Sports. However, Omega has released far too many models, far too many Planet Oceans, far too many Seamasters, far too many Speedmasters. You want to try and stay with the iconic models. The Speedmaster Man on the Moon, the traditional Halcyon glass one, that's the one to get. Brands like Patek, I got to be honest with you. Patek, yes, they are a great watch. They will always retain value, but they are fucking hard to sell. Once you have a wristwatch over $15,000, the number of buyers really drops off. Yes, people love it. Yes, 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 but $15,000 once you get over that figure there on the used market, ooh, very, very tough to move. Very tough to move. Very hard to sell. So you've got to remember this. I mean, these wristwatches that you may love, lust after and crave, they've got to have someone to buy them after you have lusted, craved and handled them. So in many ways, a lot of these watches here are going to be very hard to sell. Brands that are hard to sell. Panerai. Panerai's had a huge market correction. Huge. Panerai, hard to sell. Breitling, hard to sell. IWC, hard to sell. Jaeger-LeCoultre, hard to sell. Now, I've had discussions with owners of these brands who've said they're so much better than Rolex. Yes, they probably are. Yes, yes, yes. But the market wants the price paid for Rolex. Rolex. And I gotta be honest with you. Are you buying as a collector? Are you buying as an investor? Why are you buying? And it is a very hard truth to swallow, but the really cool stuff is fucking hard to sell, and you may have to sell it for less than you paid for it. Supply and demand. Yes, a lot of the Rolexes are pretty fucking boring. Yes, they are. But the value retention on Rolex is not to be sneezed at. Now, there are models in the Rolex range which are harder to sell than others. Rolex is really playing the collector market for suckers. They are releasing models, limiting supply, and then once they get a bit hard to sell, they'll change a dial variation, i.e., let's think deep sea. Then they had the James Cameron, very, very hot, you can't get one. James Cameron's still strong. And then they released 43 mil. So all of a sudden, ooh, the deep sea bar, maybe it's a bit too big. They got the new product to zoom in and scoop those sails up. And what's going to happen then? Then they might have instead of a red dial one, they might have a white dial, or a blue dial, or a green dial one. Hey, how about that? Sea Dweller in green, or orange, or yellow. How does that sound as a funky idea? What do you reckon? And it doesn't cost much to do that production-wise, but the collectors go nuts for little variations. Rolex is starting to play the market for suckers. I mean, they produce 1 million watches a year. You're going to tell me they couldn't possibly have enough ceramic Daytonas lined up? No. Clever marketing. People want what they can't have. Very clever. This is the change in the world. The collectible watch market itself there, very, very tough indeed. If you're trying to sell IWC, Jaeger-LeCoultre, very fucking hard. Panerai, Breitling, very fucking hard indeed. Rolex is king. Rolex is king, but there are models that are harder to sell. The Deep Sea is proving to be a softer model until they stop it. Imagine if Rolex stops making the Deep Sea, they'll shoot up then. People want what they can't have. So the collectible watch market itself, if you want to be smart, you would stay with steel Rolex Sports. Maybe a little bit in two-tone, but not too heavily. Omega Sports, they've kind of released too many. They've killed it for themselves. But classic icons, like the Speedmaster, the original Speedmaster Professional. Brands like IWC, Panerai, Jaeger-LeCoultre, you're going to have to factor in. They will be harder to sell come retail time. They are harder to sell. This marketplace we live in here, there ain't no 100% certainties. It's a tough time. It's very tough. Tough economic environment, tough world environment. The place is changing so quickly. Sometimes it's best to buy things that you like. What do you like for yourself? Don't do it for the money. do what you like. If you are going to do it for the money, Steel Sports Rolex, some classic iconic Omega, and be very, very careful with the rest of the stuff, because no matter how cool or great the brand is, you got to be careful. Patek, yes, Patek is probably okay, but so hard to sell something once it gets over 15,000 US dollars. I'm Paul Pluter from the ArchieLuxury channel, discussing the true environment we live in. Tell me what you think. I think it's fucked. The watch market as an investment tool is fucked unless you're buying Steel Sports Rolex.